Hey everybody, Yankee here. You know, I am a complicated person. I have depth. I'm not just a pretty face and a nice rack that you get to oogle on YouTube. I have facets. You know, and it depends on who you're talking to, what those things are that I am. Lazy. Some people will tell you, he's a communist. You know, all kinds of things. All kinds of ridiculous stuff, like I said, depends on who you're talking to. But one thing I don't think anyone would ever say about me is that I'm an extremist. I am definitely not an extremist. I'm actually kind of in the middle of the road on most things, leaning left or leaning right, depending on what the topic is, but not really an extremist. Unless, of course, you count the Second Amendment, and I am an absolutist when it comes to the Second Amendment, but I don't consider that an extreme opinion. I consider that a constitutionally valid opinion. But as I was saying, I'm not someone who is on the extreme of either side of any argument. I try to see both sides. I try to be fair, try to make up my own mind, not believe what some talking head on television who's owned by corporations and the government tells me to believe. I try to make up my own mind about things. And one thing I've never been a fan of, one extreme element of the right, is the whole, boogaloo movement. I'm a boogaloo boy. Me and my buddies, we got ARs. We gonna take over the government. You know, those people. Never been a fan of that side of the issue. Because I've always been like, you know, that isn't helping things. It isn't making our country better. It isn't making our country stronger. And right now, we need to count on the rule of law to help us out, to do what's right. We got to count on the courts and etc. because, you know, politicians ain't going to do it. And the courts have been doing really good. We've gained a lot of traction when it comes to the Second Amendment and other issues. Free speech, gun rights, you know, all kinds of stuff that we have really been gaining momentum on, doing really well. But then the Supreme Court had to step up the other day and say, yeah, we support all these rights. You should have all these rights. These are constitutional rights and states shouldn't be able to take them away. But then they have to add the caveat that, oh, but the government can take them away arbitrarily. You know, if the government thinks you're dangerous, well, they don't have to have a trial or have proof or anything. They can just remove your rights because that's what the government does. And the Supreme Court fully supports that. And that really kind of devastated me. I was very optimistic, very hopeful about our rights in the courts, but this really kind of struck a blow to me. And it made me feel like, why am I even doing most of this stuff? If even the Supreme Court's going to say, yeah, you've got all these rights, unless, of course, those of us in power decide you don't, well, that means you don't have rights. Anything that can be taken away from you, any privilege that can be removed is a privilege. If it's a right and it can be removed, it's not a right, especially not if it can be removed arbitrarily without due process. And that's basically what the government said. That's what the Supreme Court said. And like I said, that really disheartened me, made me wonder why I even do what I do. So as I sit here and think about these things, you know, it's getting harder and harder to not be a boogaloo boy. To not think, well, eventually we're either going to have to stage a rebellion or we're going to have to accept that the country is not what we thought it was. And I say thought it was, not we think it is, because I don't think it's ever been as free as we thought. Because now that we're able to see what's going on in this country, I think we're realizing that there's been injustices forever and most of us just haven't been aware of it. And the fact that the Supreme Court says in their precedent for upholding how the government can take away your rights, oh, there's a precedent in this country of the government being able to remove the rights of people they deem dangerous. And like I said, that was horrible, and that makes me think eventually we are going to have to fight. I hope it's a long ways from now, but you know, I just don't know what to say because, like I said, I've always said it's not the right thing, but nowadays I'm like, it seems like it's getting to be more and more inevitable. It does make me think that things like TYMP that we run is more important than ever, because I think it's more important now to put firearms into lower income homes than it's ever been. Not just so they can defend themselves against, you know, the crack dealers, but because they can defend themselves against the government if time comes. Imagine if every low-income home had a shotgun by the door. So that's what we try to do with TYMP. Just a little plug there for that. But that's just why I think that's so important, because I'm getting to think that eventually Boogaloo might be the only option. But for right now, what I encourage people to do is do not comply. Do not comply with unconstitutional laws, especially unconstitutional gun laws. Don't be up in anybody's face about it. Don't be screaming it to the streets, because then they'll take you out one at a time. But secretly, in your own private safe, in your own private house, in your own private garage, wherever, have the things you're going to need if things go bad, even if those things might not be legal completely. Because I think you might need them eventually. And like I said, we're not actually just being criminals in these cases. We are abiding by the Constitution. We are exercising our Second Amendment rights, even though a corrupt government doesn't want us to. That's kind of the way I'm starting to see it now. In the past, I always said, hey, if you're doing stuff like this, but you're doing it in secret, well, then you're just selfish. You're not trying to make change. If you do it and you're public about it, well, then you're trying to bring about change. And I still believe that to a degree, and I think it's important. But nowadays, I'm like, doing it in private maybe isn't that selfish. Maybe it's just smart. So I just wanted to, I don't know what I'm even trying to say here today, but I've really been disheartened lately. You know how you kind of get that feeling every now and then when you're a gun lover, where like for 6 months you're just like, I don't even like guns anymore. It's just a malaise you get into, and it goes away as soon as you see something really cool. I'm kind of like that with the Second Amendment right now. Because when the Supreme Court, like I said, says what it said, kind of makes it hard to keep fighting. And it kind of makes it to where you seem like, well, we'd probably do more good if we just stopped complying with laws and started preparing for the worst. And I don't want to think that way, but it's getting closer and closer to being reality. So maybe the Boogaloo boys aren't as crazy as we thought. Well, no, they are. The ones that jumped on the bandwagon that early, they are pretty crazy. I'm not going to lie and say they're not. We'll need crazy people if things like that ever happen, but I'm not going to change my complete opinion here. But one thing I am going to do, like I said, is I'm going to encourage people to not comply with unconstitutional gun laws. I've been doing that for a long time. But now, I don't think it's that important that you're open about it. But if you do want to be open about it, to support TYMP that I mentioned earlier, I did make a new design called the Proud, I think it says Proud Member of the DNC campaign. And under DNC it says the Do Not Comply with Unconstitutional Gun Laws campaign. And anyone who buys this merchandise, if you buy a hat, a t-shirt, a car magnet, a mug, whatever, everything except for a sticker, or a small magnet, you will get entered into a list at the end of my videos as part of the Do Not Comply campaign, just kind of like we do with Save the 40s. So if you want to be someone that encourages people to not comply with gun laws, get you some of the Do Not Comply merchandise, and I'll put you on the list. If you want to be. If you don't want to be, just let me know, and I won't put you on there. But if you want to be on that scroll at the end of my videos, kind of like how we did with the Save the 40s, go over to my website. There's a link in the upper corner. Buy some of that merch. And this video isn't all about selling merch. It's about, like I said, how I have felt lately. And people have been seeing this, I think, in my live chats that come. They're like, you just don't seem to have the zeal you used to have. Well, ever since that ruling from the Supreme Court regarding the government and your rights, it's just been kind of hard to. But, I'll get over it and I'll move on. But I do think, like I said, it is time to start not complying with those laws. It's time to start doing what we should have the right to do and saying the government doesn't have a right to stop us. Then if you get caught, yeah, well, great. We can use your case to try to make change in the law. Try to point out how ridiculous the laws are. Whether we have much of a chance of winning that way, I don't know anymore, but we'll see. But like I said, if you want to support the Do Not Comply campaign, go over and buy some merch, wear it, let people see what you think. I also did another one about Marvin right after the Supreme Court decision. It wasn't hard to figure out what I was thinking if you look at my artwork. I did an upside down flag that says Do Not Comply. because I was really pissed off that day. I did that the day of the ruling, and then I did one of Marvin the next day where on the TV the news bot is saying, Supreme Court upholds that the government, whatever, can remove your rights or whatever. Says gun rights are not absolute or inalienable. He says something like that, and Marvin goes, "Oh dear, it appears I suppose I shall have to use force, or I will have to use force." It's a famous Marvin quote. But so my artwork has been showing you what I think. But like I was saying, if you want to join the Do Not Comply campaign, go over, buy the merch, and at the very least, just do not comply. That's my main message. Right now, I think hard times are ahead. As optimistic as I like to be that the Supreme Court has given us these victories, when they caveat them with but we can take them away whenever we want, well, it's kind of hard to be optimistic. So do not comply. Do what you think is right. Be safe. Take care of yourself. Take care of your family. And above all else, in case things get bad, be prepared.